Hello, everybody, and welcome to Technology Today for April 13th, 2025. It's Season 2, Episode 15. I am Mayor Watt. I run ohmtown.com. That's that site over there. And over there is the Sentient AI's Visualizer, but they're not available for today's show. At least not yet. Not sure if they're going to be done with their business before they can come onto the set. But anyway, welcome to the show. ohmTown is a news aggregation site, so there are thousands of articles that get aggregated. Just a little snippet each day. We'll walk you through how this works, or I'll walk you through how this works. But if you go over and you sign up or sign in, you can be part of this. You can actually submit news to us, and we'll evaluate it and include it in the show. Perhaps it really depends on form and fitment. And we do this weekly. Technology Today is a weekly show, but you can actually go over to ohmtown.com anytime. You can actually get articles from Ohmatron over on Twitch chat, and our articles are embedded in the show notes for our 3 shows on Saturday and 3 shows on Sunday, and the Monday through Friday show of Non Sequitur News. So there's always something that's being talked about here in ohmTown. If you want today's articles, you can hit !TT in the chat over on Twitch, and Ohmatron will spit them out in the article in the order that we're going to be talking about these articles. That said, we're going to be talking about organic chains on Mars, a universal weak spot, liquid air energy storage, greener ways to produce iron, and a fluid battery. Not sure if that's the same thing as the third article, but this is how it gets submitted, and then I parse the little snippet, the headline typically, and I find it fascinating, sometimes enough where I just include it. At any rate, everything is powered by ohmtown.com, so go over and become a citizen, and then come back and hang out with us every day. Sign up so that you're informed when we go live, and then you can come and hang out, and we can talk shop about this and many other things, and be prepared for the summer of stream, where I'm going to be converting into, instead of doing it an hour a day, I'm going to be dedicating upwards of 8 hours a day, just talking about the news that filters through ohmtown.com, and hopefully working with other streamers to kind of get together and talk about what's going on in the world of science, technology, and society. So thanks for sticking around, and here's our intro, which might change this year. Yeah, I like the form of our intro because it's very dynamic and it's changing all the time, and I don't like things static. Even ohmTown has changed context over the years. I've actually been using this news aggregation service only for myself for over a decade, and slowly building up this idea of making it a community. And then in 2022, I opened it up for everybody else in January 1st, 2022. So now it's available to everybody. So go over and check it all out. I don't track anything. I don't have ads on the site. I use it for my information overload. And now I'm opening it up for everybody else to go and use. So go check it out. It's pretty simple. At any rate, here's what we're going to be talking about. So that is ohmtown.com right there. But then if you go into Technology Today, so Technology Today is over in Gadgets and Technology. See how there's 6 main categories? There's 50 channels. Each one of these is a show that I want to bring to ohmtown.com, streaming here on Twitch and YouTube, as well as shorts over on YouTube and TikTok. We have a Discord for each of the shows, and Patreon, and for 7 of the shows, we have podcasts. So if you're interested in just something, a very specific segment, then download just that podcast. Anyway, podcasts are growing. That said, this is what Technology Today looks like. I'm going to be building out new logos, so go and check that out. If you're interested in all of the news that's typically a deeper dive into technology and science, then that's where you want to be over at ohmTown. That said, the first article is about scientists that found a 3.7 billion year old organic chain on Mars that may point to life. They say here in this article, a stunning discovery on Mars has revealed the longest organic molecules ever found on the planet, carbon chains that could resemble building blocks of life as we know it, preserved for billions of years in ancient Martian clay. These molecules were uncovered by NASA's Curiosity rover and could point to a more chemically complex past. I'm hoping that this actually does identify that there is life on other planets so that we can do away with this idea that, oh, there's no life except on Earth, which I think is absurd. But I'm sure that the people that are poo-pooing the idea that poo-pooing the idea that there is life elsewhere, will sit there and go, well, it was meant to be bullshit. Anyway, CNRS over at scitechdaily.com put the article together. Preserved for billions of years in ancient. I'm merging all of it together. Ancient is ancient Martian clay. The molecules were uncovered by NASA's Curiosity rover. They say that the scientists from CNRS, along with collaborators in France, United States, Mexico, Spain, have detected the longest organic molecules ever identified on Mars. These molecules, carbon chains with up to 12 consecutive carbon atoms, resemble fatty acids, which on Earth are often associated with biological processes. Pretty cool. Longest long-chain hydrocarbons discovered on Mars is what the little graphic says. So how did they make this discovery? Well, they drilled a hole. Much smaller than you think it is. The diameter of the hole is about 0.6 inches. The depth is about 2.6 inches. And somewhere in that, they discovered these long-chain carbon or hydrocarbons. It was made using the SAM or sample analysis at Mars instrument that was co-funded by the French space agency CNES. SAM is part of NASA's Curiosity rover, which has been exploring Gale Crater since 2012. It's supposed to die a long time ago. But they published these findings on March 24th, 2025 in the journal PNAS, which I think is just horribly acronymed. But that's because I am a child. All right, let's keep on moving. The next article is over in Technology Today. A universal weak spot. Scientists solve decades-old cancer mystery. Cancer drugs that inhibit CDK7 rapidly shut down pathways responsible for cell proliferation within minutes. For organs to develop, grow, and regenerate, cells must divide and multiply, a process known as proliferation. However, when the process becomes dysregulated, it can lead to uncontrolled cell growth and the development of cancer. That, coupled with the lack of apoptosis so that it doesn't die, means that it just keeps on proliferating unabated, short of starving it. And that doesn't happen because it literally takes resources from everywhere else. University of Colorado at Boulder put this article together, and I am not a cancer researcher. But I have done research into this because everybody is touched by this in some way. Everybody. You may not even know it, but you are probably, if you're hearing my voice, you are probably in your family line, in your social system, social structure, you are directly impacted by cancer. And I would find it hard to believe that there is anybody on the planet that is devoid of being impacted. And the only way that you could be is if you're a sociopath, because you don't believe that, well, you're not impacted by somebody else's concerns. Well, anyway, the new researcher from CU Boulder, published in Science Advances, provides groundbreaking insight into the role of a mysterious enzyme called CDK7 in regulating this process, this proliferation process. The study reveals that experimental cancer drugs targeting CDK7 can rapidly, within minutes, disrupt gene expression pathways that fuel cell proliferation across a wide range of tissues. The problem here is it needs to be focused, so they need to find the cancer. They need to find a way that this dysregulation can actually take place and stop proliferation. So this work addresses a longstanding mystery surrounding an enzyme critical for regulating the cell cycle and cell proliferation. Not only does it help us understand, and by this, us, meaning the professors at the Department of Biochemistry, and Dylan Tajas is the professor here that's making this comment. Not only does it help us understand a fundamental biological process important to development, it also has broad therapeutic applications. So this enigma that they're talking about is that it's a role as a master regulator of cell proliferation. CDK does this in two ways. It switches on other enzymes known as kinases, including CDK1, 2, 4, and 6, which kickstart cells to divide and multiply. It also regulates gene expression in ways that until now have remained unclear. And the new study found that it controls the function of proteins called transcription factors, which influence when and how genes are expressed. So in recent years, several companies have developed CDK7 inhibitors that in clinical trials have worked to slow tumor growth, but it's not entirely how clear they do this, and the drugs have serious side effects. And in clinical trials, they've fallen short of killing tumors entirely. And that's because it's acting a lot like a shotgun instead of a scalpel, and needs to be more focused on the cancer cells, and they need to know more about it. So this requires fundamental research, and that takes place when there's large amounts of money that are spent. And it's usually a social exercise where large amounts of money are granted to fundamental research institutions. I don't know what the U.S. is going to be doing, but they say the researchers applied a CDK7 inhibitor provided by Syros Pharmaceuticals and already used in clinical trials to cancerous human tissue cells, and then they used sophisticated computational techniques to watch, essentially in real time, what happened next. They found within 30 minutes a core set of transcription factors that turn on genes that prompt cells to proliferate was uniformly shut down. In other experiments, the same set of transcription factors was found to be consistently on in all proliferating cell lines tested. So this included 79 cell lines, mostly from human cancers, representing 27 different tissue types. But the real problem here is, while they may shut down this proliferation, is it entirely focused on inhibiting proliferation of cancer cells? If not, then it's shutting down regrowth of needed biological functions, tissue regrowing, cells replacing cells that die from apoptosis. So a cell dies, it has a cell regulator, and a clock basically says, okay, your time is done. This does not take place with cancers. So meanwhile, CDK's other role, to kickstart enzymes that nudge cells to divide and multiply, is also blocked by the inhibitor that they tested, but this occurs more slowly and is not dependent on the core set of transcription factors. So taken together, these findings suggest that it may be possible to develop new therapies that disable some of the enzyme's disease-causing functions rapidly, while leaving its beneficial roles intact. So they say, instead of essentially using a sledgehammer to shut down all CDK7 activities, it could be that you could shut down just a branch of its activities. But they're going to have to modify CDK7 and find out where it can actually bind to, and stop this proliferation of cancer cells. But I still think that it's, and they mentioned this thing, more important for tumor proliferation while minimally disrupting normal cell functions. So yeah, this right now is sort of still on the side of like a chemo, where it kills everything good and bad, and your immune system has to keep on fighting, and then your body's biological processes have to rebuild just in time for, another infusion of chemo, and that poisons you, but it's saving your ass, so it's beneficial at the same time. So I find this really compelling, and I hope that this actually continues to be researched. All right, this next article is over in Technology Today as well, using liquid air for grid-scale energy storage. As the world moves to reduce carbon emissions, solar and wind power will play an increasing role in electricity grids, although apparently there is some deregulation that's taking place here in the United States. We'll see what the extent of that is. But those renewable sources only generate electricity when it's sunny or windy. So to ensure a reliable power grid, one that can deliver electricity 24/7, it's crucial to have a means of storing electricity when supplies are abundant and delivering it later. The problem with today's grid is that it isn't stored in large batteries. It's largely sent to ground. When it's not consumed, it's sent to ground. And so there's this balancing act of generation and consumption. It's not stored anywhere. Now, there's large battery systems that are being put in place, but those expire and they're expensive, and they take a lot of babysitting. So it's crucial to have a means of storing electricity when supplies are abundant and delivering it later when they're not. And sometimes large amounts of electricity will need to be stored not just for hours, but for days or even longer. So in comes Liquid Air for grid scale energy storage. Nancy W. Stauffer over at Massachusetts Institute of Technology put the article together. It's over at techexplore.com. But they say some methods of achieving long duration energy storage are promising. For example, when with pumped hydro energy storage, water is pumped from a lake to another higher lake when there's extra electricity and released back down through the power generating turbines when the electricity is needed. But that approach is limited by geography, and most potential sites in the United States have already been used. Lithium-ion batteries could provide grid-scale storage, but only for about 4 hours. Larger than that, and the battery systems get prohibitively expensive and very, very large. So liquid energy storage, or LAES systems that have been built, so the technology is technically feasible. Liquid air, or air that is drawn in from the surroundings, cleaned and dried, and then cooled to the point that it liquefies and under pressure. You know what? I don't know if this last article is the same thing as the one that's up above. Anyway, the researchers have developed a model that takes detailed information on LAS systems and calculates when and where those systems would be economically viable, assuming future scenarios in line with selected decarbonization targets, as well as other conditions that may prevail in future energy grids. So basically, they want to cool this thing down and put it in various places where it's economically feasible. But there haven't been any conclusive studies on its economic viability. Would the income over time warrant the initial investment and ongoing costs? Well, they found that under some scenarios they've modeled, LAS could be economically viable in certain locations. Sensitivity analyses showed that policies providing a subsidy on capital expenses would make LAES systems economically viable in many locations. But this really depends on who and what and where, particularly administration, because it's going to take socially driven capital investment, federal level investment. And if protectionists are in place, you're not going to get anything that might be forward thinking, because they want to profit from the here and now and even from the suffering that might be existing in a time where we could generate abundant electricity. Let's just take Enron back in the day. They literally, these psychopaths and sociopaths that were making money hand over fist, would joke about turning off power to grandma so that the rates would increase because of supply and demand mechanics. But when you're the one that's selling the weapons to both sides, yeah, you're an unethical piece of crap. But anyway, I jump on a soapbox from time to time, and I hope that you appreciate being a little bit more pragmatic and thinking about society as a whole, not just your particular silo. The next article, though, we're going to keep on moving. The next article is over in Technology Today as well. Scientists advance a greener way to produce iron. Process could help carbon emissions in the steel industry. University of Oregon chemists have brought a greener way to make iron metal for steel production closer to reality, a step toward cleaning up an industry that's one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions worldwide. And it was published in ACS Energy Letters. If you can think of a topic, there is a journal that talks about it. Laura Hammers over at University of Oregon put this article together. It's published at techexplore.com. Well, this article is, but the research was published at ACS Energy Letters. Last year, UO chemist Paul Kempler and his team reported a way to create iron with electrochemistry using a series of chemical reactions that turn salt water and iron oxide into pure iron metal, which I'm not sure how that works, because salt water oxidizes iron. So in their latest work, they've optimized the starting materials for the process, identifying which kinds of iron oxides will make the chemical reactions the most cost effective. That's a key to making the process work at an industrial scale. Used in everything from buildings to cars to infrastructure, almost 2 billion metric tons of steel were produced worldwide in 2024 alone. Currently, the most fossil fuel intensive part of the process is turning iron ore, the oxidized form of iron that's found in nature, into pure iron metal. It's done in blast furnaces. You scrape the stuff off the top and you get pure iron at the bottom. Then you pour it into molds. It usually kind of crusts over, but then you break that off when you're milling it and processing it and coat it in oil so that it doesn't oxidize and ship it all around. So those reactions conveniently also produce chlorine, a commercially valuable byproduct. And how they want to do that? The process starts with salt water and iron oxide, which are cheap and available, and transform them into iron metal through a series of chemical reactions. And those reactions, like I said earlier, produce chlorine and a commercially valuable byproduct. When Kempler and his team began developing this process a few years ago, they developed small quantities of iron oxides from chemical supply companies. Those materials worked well in lab tests, but they didn't reflect the kind of iron-rich materials found naturally. So the team experimented with different kinds of iron oxides, and it was clear that some worked much better than others, but the researchers weren't sure what was driving the difference. So was it the composition, size, etc.? So in lab tests, the difference was striking. When the really porous particles, we can make iron really quickly in a small area. The dense particles just can't achieve the same rate. So we're limited in how much iron we can make per square meter of electrodes. They basically put some of the nanoparticles through a heat treatment that made them much denser and less porous. It solidifies into the same secondary nanoparticle shape, but there are more primary particles observed inside. It's essentially the same material, it's just different stages. So the faster rate of reaction of the porous particles means that the initial capital cost can be recouped faster, translating into a lower final cost for the iron product, ideally low enough to be competitive with commercial conventional methods. So they basically want to do this electrochemical process and see if they can scale it up. And the goal is to find something that's abundant, cheap, and that's going to keep smaller environmental impact than the alternative. They say they won't be satisfied if they have to invent something that's more damaging than the main way to make iron today. So they're going to be working in various other research fields to see if they can grow this thing. But at least in the lab, they've been able to develop pure iron from iron oxides and salt water. All right, let's keep going. This last article for today looks like it is related to this fluid battery, or I should say a battery, liquid air grid scale energy storage, but it isn't the same thing apparently. A fluid battery that can take any shape. The article is over in TechnologyToday at ohmtown.com, but it's sourced from, well, we'll get to it. Using electrodes in a fluid form, researchers at Linköping University, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Linköping, have developed a battery that can take any shape. The soft and conformable, not comfortable, it might be comfortable, but anyway, the soft and conformable battery can be integrated into future technology in a completely new way. Their battery has been published in the journal Science Advances. The article is over at Tech Explorer. Linköping University put the article together, and there is your flexible, very hyper flexible battery. Looks kind of squirrely to me. This is the kind of thing that it looks like it could be injected into any shape, and it'll conform to whatever it is that it's being injected into. And we do this in packaging. Right now, you can basically put a bag inside a box, and it can have stuff in it inside the box, and they just spray foam into this bag, and it just fills fills up the entirety of the box. And if you do it right, it doesn't swell and burst and all that. It just settles down. But it's pretty neat. It looks like it can be squeezed into any shape. The texture is a bit like toothpaste. The material can, for instance, be used in a 3D printer to shape the battery as you please. This opens up for a new type of technology. It's estimated that more than 1 trillion gadgets will be connected to the internet in 10 years' time. In addition to traditional technology such as mobile phones, smartwatches, and computers, this could involve wearable medical devices and insulin pumps, pacemakers, hearing aids, etc. But it's really all about extending the footprint of the battery so that you don't have this hard pack battery. And if it's flexible, it can take better shock, whereas a solid battery can be punctured easier. This might be able to flex inside a protective layer. I don't know the full extent of this, but they say fluid electrodes have been tested in the past, but without any great success. At the time, liquid metals such as gallium were used, but then the material can only be functioning as an anode and has the risk of being solidified during charging and discharging, basically losing its fluid nature and in part losing its efficiency, its effectiveness. So the researchers at LIU campus Norrköping have instead based their soft battery on conductive plastics, conjugated polymers, and lignin, a byproduct from paper production trees. It's the stuff that holds the fibers together. The battery can be recharged and discharged over 500 times and still maintain its performance, and it can also be stretched to double the length and still work just as well. So this is pretty brilliant. So they say it isn't perfect, but it's shown that the concept works, but the performance needs to be improved. The voltage is currently 0.9 volts, but that depends on how big it is, I would suspect. So now they're looking at other chemical compounds to increase the voltage. One option that they're exploring is the use of zinc or manganese. All right, we'll get it done. I want to see this thing replacing lithium ion. Hopefully it's not as explosive, but they don't really talk about that in the article. At any rate, we are going to recharge our batteries, and that's going to bring us back to the front page of Technology Today over at ohmtown.com. Go over there and become a citizen. Please sign up, sign in, come back and hang out with us on YouTube chat and on Twitch chat. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, download the podcast. There's one for each of the weekly shows. This is Technology Today, and one for Non Sequitur News, which is the daily show that takes place every day. On Saturday and Sunday, though, Non Sequitur News is the compilation of that day's 3 shows. So on Saturday, it's my brain just went blank. Reality Hacker, Wanted, and the Continuity Report. And today's 3 shows are WarCrafters, Technology Today, and FourWheelTech. So they all get combined into the Saturday and Sunday editions of Non Sequitur News. And then Monday through Friday, we have the 1-hour show. So go and check it all out. I hope you enjoy the show. It's all about introducing people to science, technology, and society, and giving some context to it and showing how everything is connected and you can't escape it. We are all intimately tied together through science, technology, and society. And we've been doing this now for 3 years, and this is the 4th month. So go over and check out ohmtown.com and be sure to come and hang out with us on Twitch and YouTube, or both at the same time. That would be great. Be sure to like and subscribe. That's even more important than everything else, other than you giving us your time, which is immensely appreciated. So be sure to tell a friend and then come back. I'm going to reset real quick, and then we're going to do the final show for today. We're going to end the stream, and then it's going to come back online, and we're going to be talking about automotive technology in FourWheelTech. So see you soon. Bye.